Good morning, everyone. Okay, come on. I always listen. Let's a little lively. Good morning. Hey, there you go. That's great. All right. I'm Dr. G, the Vice Chancellor for Student Affairs. I'll tell you later what I do. But I was asked to make an announcement that if there's any member of the class of 2026 that's in this room, you actually have to quietly leave because you are supposed to be at your mandatory residential college meeting right now. And of course, I'm sure families are probably texting their kids saying, wake up, you're supposed to be at a meeting. Feel free to do so. All righty. Well, welcome everyone, families and parents. I'm actually going to have the pleasure to introduce our Chancellor. After he speaks, we will have our Associate Vice Chancellors from Student Affairs actually be open live for questions. For those of you in the overflow room, please note that you can put questions, I believe, on the chat. You can do paper if you're in Graham or online. And by the way, for those who are in our overflow rooms or just watching us from this live stream, hello, and hopefully you're also enjoying it. So I just want to say a few things for folks just to get to know one another. And actually, if you're in Graham, you can participate. If you are able to either stand or wave when I call out where you're from. So our families from the East Coast, wave or stand if you're able. Ooh, there's a lot here at Edison. East Coast. All right, how about the best? I'm in West Coast. I know, a little bias, a little bias. The Midwest. All right, South, the South. Yeah. All right, how about Hawaii, Alaska, Guam, Puerto Rico? Oh, they get a pot. And how about our families who traveled from other international countries, please? Oh, all right. Welcome, welcome. So now it's my great pleasure to introduce the Chancellor of WashU, Chancellor Andrew D. Martin, who serves as our 15th Chancellor. He's a respected and gifted administrator and highly regarded academic. He's also an alum of WashU, where he earned his doctorate in political science and was a distinguished member of our faculty before leaving us to go to the University of Michigan. We're so happy that he chose to come back to WashU and lead our amazing institution. I am enjoying working with him, seeing his vision come to light. And I know that some of you have already seen him walk around yesterday at the 40. And I know your students will tell you that he is a cool and awesome chancellor. And with that, I'd like to invite Chancellor Martin.
Yeah, I don't know about that cool thing, Dr. G. Thank you for the introduction. And I'd really like to thank this incredible staff we have here at Washington University who've worked so hard to get us to this point and will continue throughout the course of this orientation week. Let's give a round of applause to the team here for all that they've done. To the class of 2026 parents and families, welcome to Washington University. We are so excited to meet your students, the most diverse and accomplished class in WashU's history. I know you must be so very proud and excited for your student, not only that they made it here, but they are now part of a community of peers who will challenge them, commiserate with them, love them, and walk alongside them during this special time in their lives. In the next 4 years, they will build bonds that will enrich the remainder of their lives. The class of 2026 is also the most economically diverse in WashU's history too, and has the most students who identify as people of color. How lucky we are to learn along such a wide variety of people with rich experiences and valuable perspectives to share. Families, I am so grateful for the privilege of spending this time with you today. First, I want to thank you for the manual labor of moving your students into their new homes. If you survived move-in day in the St. Louis weather, you are certainly ready for the next Herculean task. I'm not talking about saying your final goodbyes. I mean, you're ready to brave the world's most harrowing Target parking lot for those last-minute room essentials. Trust me, if you can survive the Target parking lot today, you can handle the next 4 years. Thank you, too, for raising this intelligent, thoughtful, inquisitive, resourceful, creative bunch of young people. Truly, we are incredibly impressed. I know that each of you has sacrificed much to reach this milestone. Maybe you traded vacations to afford music lessons or technology camp or club sports. Maybe you held them on your lap and read Goodnight Moon what felt like 1,000 times. And your child is here today to write their own story. The tutors, the late night study snacks, the helping hands, the tough love, it all meant something. It all meant that today, you and your child are joining the WashU family, a family which will strive to nurture your child intellectually, professionally, and as a responsible citizen of a global society working toward making the world a better place. We honor your role in raising your student, and we thank you for entrusting their education to us here at WashU. And speaking of trust, I want to encourage you to think about how you will demonstrate your trust in the years ahead. My wife, Stephanie, and I have a daughter in the 8th grade, and looking ahead to when I'll sit in your seat in just a few years, it's really hard to imagine that she'll be ready to handle some of the basics of life on her own. Will she remember to eat her veggies, go to bed when she's tired, or know how to separate her whites from her colors if we aren't there to remind her? Heck, she might not even know that she's supposed to separate her whites and her colors. But when the time is it for her to go to college, it will be time for us to let her learn. Because honestly, a basket full of shrunken sweaters or newly pink socks goes a long way to show our students that we trust them. It may sound silly, but what your student really wants from you right now is not your services as a hands-on parent, but to know that you trust them to find their way and to recover from their mistakes without your help. Maybe that could be your code word, moms and dads. When you're tempted to step in too soon, take a deep breath and ask each other whether your child is having a true problem or simply a pink sock moment. That said, they also need to know that you're still on the other end of the line when they call. Not to fix things, maybe not to even offer advice, but just to listen, to offer words of support and encouragement, to keep them connected to the traditions of home in some capacity. When they know that they are still supported from afar, they will develop the confidence to explore their unique individual passions and interests. And that's certainly what they'll do on this campus, and it's an important part of their time here. I'll tell you today that some of you are eventually going to get the call, not about laundry. The call I'm talking about is when your pre-med science whiz calls home to ponder a switch to art history, or when your sensitive poet calls home to announce a switch to computer science. Families take these calls as good news. Your student will be poised for a life of success and service if they are in love with what they're learning. Let them have this time of exploration and be amazed how they manage to fit all the pieces of the puzzle together to make this meaningful for themselves. In conclusion, I hope the days ahead go smoothly and that you're able to enjoy these memorable moments. We are always happy to take your calls and emails should you ever want to talk. You too are part of the WashU family beginning today. Thank you again for being here.
Thank you, Chancellor Martin. Please, let's give him another round of applause. That was amazing. So I'm in my 30th year of working in higher education full-time. I know. It's my third vice presidency or vice chancellorship, and I have spoken to thousands and thousands and thousands of families, parents, support systems for our students. And I often like to tell the story about my mom. When my mom's a little dramatic, and so she didn't really understand what I do. Folks in higher ed might tell you, especially in student affairs, our families don't really know what we do. But when I became a dean, they threw a party for me, and she said, she gave the speech, and it broke my heart what she said, but I took it to heart. She said, I hope that you don't take away other people's children the way your school took you away from us. I know, I told you. She hates that I tell this story. I actually write about this. But what it was I thought about that. And one of the things that we do at WashU is we do not take away your student from you. Rather, we invite you. I mean, you're here, you're present. We understand that they come from different backgrounds, that the bags that they come with or the trunks, we saw a lot of stuff during move-in, that they bring with them has you imprinted there as well. So we get that. We're not going to shut the doors. We're going to work with you as partners. And at the same time, as the chancellor said, that there's going to be trust that you're going to give to your student and to us, that when you leave this place, you should know that your student are in great hands. The students are in great hands. And so I just want to say that we will not shut the doors. We're not ripping them from you. We understand that they come from you, that you come with them. But our conversations, our dialogue, the three things that I tell families will happen. So just remember this from the vice chancellor. Tell your students. So when they tell you, oh my gosh, there was no room and they didn't tell me. There's always deadlines, and we're very transparent about deadlines. That there's accountability. We will teach them accountability, and we will always do it with care. So deadlines, accountability, and always with care. And with that, I'm going to ask my partners in crime, the Student Affairs Leadership Team, to introduce themselves briefly, and then we're going to start with the questions. So Dr. Mark Kamimura Jimenez, if you can start that off.
Hello, everyone. My name is Mark Kamimura Jimenez. I'm the Associate Vice Chancellor for Student Affairs and Dean of the Center for Diversity and Inclusion. And in my portfolio, I also oversee the Office of Religious, Spiritual, and Ethical Life, the Office of International Students and Scholars, and the Office of Student Success. Those may not all mean, they may mean different things to some of you, but it's a great group of students that we get to support in my portfolio.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Rebecca Pryor Paray. I am the Associate Dean for Associate Vice Chancellor for Career Development and Education. I am responsible for the Career Services Enterprise, supporting your students in their career journeys from the moment they arrive here on campus through graduation and beyond. And this is my 6th day of work, which is why I flubbed my title already.
Parents, welcome to WashU. It's really good to have you here. Thank you for being here. My name is Kirk Dewar. I serve as the Associate Vice Chancellor for Health and Wellbeing. So all the student-facing health-related entities report up to me. I've been at WashU now for this is my ongoing 4th year and my 25th year in higher education.
Good afternoon, everyone, or good morning. Cheryl Mauricio, Associate Vice Chancellor for Student Affairs, overseeing the Office of Residential Life, Student Transitions and Family Programs, and summer conferences at WashU. And hopefully you have experienced a bulk of my portfolio this weekend, and hope your experience was great. I've been at WashU for almost 5 years and 2 months in this position.
Thank you. Welcome, everybody. Great to see you here this morning. My name is Rob Wilde. I have the distinction of having the longest title here on the panel. I'm the Associate Vice Chancellor for Student Affairs, Dean of Students, and Chief of Staff to Dr. Gonzalez. I also have been here the longest, I think, on the panel. This is my 23rd bare beginning since I've been working here, and I'm also a graduate of the university.
And I gotta follow that up. I try to come in before you. Good morning. I'm Anthony Asma, Associate Vice Chancellor for Athletics and Recreation. I'm finishing up my 5th year, arrived here from Columbia, and a big difference of Ivy League versus WashU is there's people that care and it's not a transactional relationship. We're trying to create a transformative experience. So welcome.
Thank you. All right, because she's been here for only 6 days, Rebecca gets the first question. There's a career, yeah. So Rebecca, when should students begin thinking about what they want to do after they graduate from WashU? What 3 services provided by the Career Center would you want parents and families to know so that they can encourage their students to take advantage of them?
Thank you, Dr. G. Well, I hinted at that in my introduction. You know, we know that the number one reason, or it's among the top maybe 2 reasons students choose to go to college is to advance their career possibilities. What we don't want is to students to wait until their senior year to start thinking about that. The threshold to getting a job these days is higher than it's been. And we want students to take the time while they're here on campus to really explore. As Chancellor Martin recommended, Chancellor Martin talked about exploring majors, right? And that major decision-making ties into that career decision-making. So we would like those students to really dig into that exploring and kind of stretch themselves beyond just major exploration to learning about the career opportunities that are out there, so that as they're getting closer to working on internships, their sophomore, junior years and senior years, that they are honing those options down and they're starting to find their way. And then our team is along with them, helping them through that process, and then helping them make a plan and be prepared for that next step. In their first year, what does that mean, right? In their first year, what could that look like? I would say there are a few things. One is we have a really great software program called Handshake. Okay, Handshake is the portal by which students will register for career events. It will be the portal through which students have the opportunity to interact, to see and be seen by employers. And so we would like to make sure that those students have a Handshake profile, ideally by December. Okay, so sign up for Handshake. We can help those students if they need that help. The second thing that we recommend students do, as you know, right? And we alluded to this, coming to a new place, new university, sorting out your laundry, sorting out your roommate, all the things that students have to experience. We want students to come and get settled. And we hope that over the course of the year, they'll use that Handshake service to sign up for one of our events. We have a number of events this year really geared toward first-year students, right? They don't have to do that tomorrow, but sometime maybe in the first semester, they could sign up for one of those first-year focused career events. And those events might be something like, get your resume in order, which would be really great for students who want to try to find a job here in the area, for example. We can help them with that. The third thing is over the course of the year, we'd really like your students to come into the office and meet with one of our peer advisors to learn about the services and learn about the career journey ahead of them, right? What's expected? What are some timelines that they should be aware of so that we can provide support to them? One of the things that we do note is that if students aren't finding out about those timelines, if students aren't kind of making progress and are aware of the services, there's a lot of worry that brews. And that can creep into things like, oh, which major do I need to have in order to get this job, right? Lots of myths kind of start to percolate. So by coming in and talking to a peer advisor and getting some of the basics and the lay of the land, we can deflate that pretty quickly. So that's going to be another really important thing. So those 3 things: Handshake profile, sign up for a first-year career-focused event this semester, and then over the course of the year, meet with one of our peer advisors.
Great, thank you. Awesome, 6th day in the job, we're telling you. So I can answer this one really quickly, and then the next question is going to go to Rob Wilde. So, but I can answer this. How do students contact their academic advisor? Students will have an opportunity to meet their academic advisors this week. So hang tight. They will meet with them this week. All right. So Rob, you get the next question. Will the university call me if my student is struggling? How can I find out if how my student is doing academically?
Thank you, Dr. G. That's a great question. And I would like to spend the next 15 minutes explaining the Family Education Rights and Privacy Act, but I won't do that. I think what I'll say at this moment is just a reminder of the message you heard from Chancellor Martin a few moments ago. This is a really important transition. And as much as we want to make sure that our students are successful, this is a moment where they need to be independent, and we need to trust them as part of that important life transition to really manage their lives in a way where they have new independence, but also new privacy. So we don't share grades, for example, with families. We don't call you if your student is absent from class. This is a very important time as you're making this transition. If you feel strongly that you have a need to know how your student is doing and how you want to communicate with them, that you talk about that with them. Because if you call me on Monday and ask me if they've been going to class, I'm going to thank you very much for calling, and I'm going to ask you to call your student. Now, in all seriousness, Dr. Gonzalez also mentioned the degree of care with which we take our responsibilities here for all of your students. And in serious situations, if we are worried about your student from a health and safety reason, you will hear from one of us, usually probably one of the three of us in the middle of the panel here, to my two colleagues to my right, or myself. And I also encourage, if you are worried about your student, if you see a pattern of behavior that is concerning to you, not about laundry, please, but a more serious concern in their behavior, you should feel free to call us and let us know about that, and we will certainly be responsive to that. But this is a time where we're not going to be sharing a lot of information, and I think it's important for you to know that and understand that that's part of the transition from being a young child to being an adult here at Washington University.
Thank you, Rob. Anthony, you're going to get the next question, but before you do, I'm going to answer this other one that just came. My student added me to their account, but I'm still not getting emails. What can I do? Please have your student complete a family email update form on new students with an S .wustl, that's WUSTL.edu. They will have to be the ones to do that. All right. Next question for Anthony is, what advice do you have for my student when it comes to living a healthy and balanced lifestyle when they come to college? What is WashU's overall approach to student physical and emotional wellness?
That's a great question. I would say one of the things Dr. G has brought to campus and that you'll see a heavy lift on is healthy excellence. And the way we try to prioritize that is a holistic approach to well-being. And we don't just talk about it, but we put those words into action. And I see a couple of parents taking great notes. So I'm gonna break it down into 3 areas so it's easy to remember when you talk to your child and you connect with them later today. 1, summer's recreation is free. That's a $52 million investment back in 2016. It has a great, welcoming, inclusive community. Whether your child works out in the morning, at lunch, in the evening, there's always a place for them to feel like they belong. It's important that they do well in the classroom, but it's also important that they learn healthy habits. To me, the goal during these 4 years is to prepare your child for the next 40 years of success. And so this is a very important piece and part to it. So how you start is how you finish. Second part, classes are free. Whether you want to spin cycle in the dark so people don't know how bad you're doing. Not to say that I've been in a class, but I think Kirk has been in that class too. Or I was trying to, but you really don't know because it's only your score is on the screen only by numbers, not by name. Thank you. But also there's, things that they can do outside of the four walls of Summers, whether it's outgoing trips, trails, or even yoga at the Arch. Again, it's about trying to develop community, develop healthy habits, and make sure no matter where your son or daughter are at in their level of fitness, there's a place for them. And then the third thing, and this is probably one of the most important, there's a place in Summers called the Zen Den. The Zen Den. There's free massage chairs in the Zen Den.
I use that. It's my favorite room.
We try to keep the adults out, unless you're Dr. G. But reason why I stress those things is because at times, if you do too much of anything, you begin to get bogged down. And then you're not at your best. And you see how none of us in any of these questions use the word perfect. Excellence doesn't mean perfect. Excellence means every day you're just trying to show up as your best self. And I think in order to have balance, this added entity that this university has invested in, it would behoove you to make sure your child takes advantage of it, even if it's just 30 minutes, 4 times a week. Get off to a good start, find a place to exhale, and connect with other students on another part of campus. So when you dive back into that academic arena, you have a fresh mind, fresh focus, and if there's anything we've learned from the pandemic, to have a better perspective.
Great. Thank you, Anthony. That's great. By the way, faculty and staff also go and work out over there as well. So yeah, exactly. Thank you. The next question is going to be for Mark. So as that's getting passed, but before then, I was asked to remind folks, if you have questions, you can write it in, you can write it on the note cards and hold them up in the air, and one of our staff or WUSAs will come and get them from you. So if you have questions that you've written in the note card, just hold them up and someone will grab them for you. All right, so Mark, I want my student to meet people who are different from them, but I am worried about cancel culture and the divisive environment that exists in our country and on our campuses right now. What is the university doing to help students learn about one another and engage in productive dialogue?
So I think this is a part of college, is really thinking about different perspectives and coming to the table with an open mind. But you hear this term open mind a lot, but it's really the ability to think about what others are also bringing to the table. What are they bringing to the conversation? And this year, we're developing a program called Intergroup Dialogue Across Difference, in which students will be able to sign up for short courses in which they get to explore a topic from different perspectives. And what's great about this program is that it starts with facilitated guidelines. And those guidelines, I'll share one of the guidelines with you, and it's do not freeze people in time. And for me, I think that was something that resonated with me when I was working in this program a while ago, earlier in my career, but that if you think back even for yourself, what were your perspectives on certain political ideologies or on fitness or on academic prep 20 years ago? When you were 18, right? Only 20 years ago. And that what were the things that were different when you started hearing others' perspectives, right? When other people started thinking, when other people started sharing what they were thinking, sometimes it shifted the way you thought. Some of the things that I came to the table with in my classrooms were very different than the way in which I developed as I read more, as I met people from different parts of the country, different parts of the world, and also as I went through my educational experience. And so what we're hoping to do here is through not just this program, but how this program will have a growing impact on the way students engage with each other. Yesterday at one of our events before the rain came, we had a group of students sitting together, and they were all talking about how they were experiencing that day, the day of move-in, differently because they all were coming from different places. So they had to prepare differently. They were packing differently. They were some of the parents were able to drive back, some had to fly back, right? All these different perspectives were influencing how they understood just move-in. And so that's the program that we're going to be developing this year. And I'm really excited because your students are going to be able to get to engage in that program and the opportunity to explore these topics in more detail.
Thank you. Thank you, Mark. And Mark has done this program as well as I and others, and super excited for this program to happen at WashU. It's so needed, and we want to be the best in class to really share with your students how to have dialogue, because it's so needed in our country. So thank you for that. So Kirk, you get to this question. So we know student mental health is a topic of much discussion on college campuses, in particular now, post-COVID and still with COVID and the issues of mental health that students are going through. So what services do we provide here at WashU, and how can families best support their students' mental health and well-being?
Thank you, Dr. G. This is a really good question, and obviously one of heightened concern for many of us. I have two students away at different universities as well. They decided Dad's university was not the one they wanted to come to, so there's a whole story there. But as the Chancellor, Rob, and others have talked about this individuation process that your students are going through, it's important to be able to recognize that that doesn't come without the travails of a university as well. The classroom is designed to be able to do the things that Mark was talking about that might happen socially, but the classroom is very dedicated to pushing our students to think differently, to learn. And if you think back to the most important growth moments in your life, they all come with a measure of stress. So by very definition, your thinking is stressed. The way that you think about things is incorporating new information, and that comes with a certain amount of anxiety. Certainly, the performance that was required to be able to have your students attain their rightful place at WashU also came with a lot of studying and development. And it also comes, unfortunately, with our student body with an elevated level of anxiety. So that is part and parcel to the university experience. So Anthony's comments about having a holistic approach to well-being and mental health is important, especially at this time as they're developing those patterns that are going to last for the next 40 years. So an important component of what we do at the University for Mental Health is to teach an attention to our emotional well-being, our physical health, and other kinds of entities. So that's part of one of the things that we do at the university, is to be able to have students recognize they don't need to be perfect. Yes, they're great students, and there are a lot of great students here at the university, and it's okay to figure out and develop as they go through this. So anxiety is part of the process, stress and development is part of the process. In addition, we provide a number of services because we know that the university can cause some of these difficulties or even exacerbate things as students march along. Mental health services we have here at the university are very good and designed to be able to assist students in a particular place. Now, we're not designed, as are no universities across campus, the United States, to serve every mental health need for every student on every campus. Does that make sense? So we work with transitional issues. We work with shorter term issues, but we also serve the campus community by providing a link between the university and the treatment community that exists here in St. Louis. So there's a number of things that we've done to that end. First of all, we have a department called WashU Cares that is always attentive to your students' needs, and they often are the first ones to become aware of stuff that comes in from the university. So if professors are concerned, if folks on Cheryl's teams are concerned, WashU Cares is the ones that are taking those reports and trying to check in and make sure our students are doing okay. If the need for mental health services is there, we're going to refer them over to the mental health services down on the South 40 right now. And we're excited about the services that they provide. They're trained professionals who specialize in working with this age group and in fact, this specific population. And they're well-versed in all the issues that students can present and cover a wide range of entities. If those services aren't exactly what your students need, Dr. G and the Chancellor have added a couple of other things that we look forward to here at the university. One of those is last year was our maiden year with a service called Timely Care that provides 24/7 access. And parents, before you leave, I would strongly urge you to make sure your students have logged in and registered with Timely Care. What we find is if they do that in the moment that they have a need where they just need to talk to somebody in the middle of the night or someone else that they want a listening ear from, they'll use the service if they've registered for it. If they have to go in and register at that time, they don't often do that. So Timely Care is a service that provides some after hours, weekend call, all that kind of stuff, and we'll connect to students. And we guide them in what it is that we want them to do, how we want them to say things, but they work with us and partner with us really well. So that's one of the services. In addition, we're also adding a service called Thriving Campus. And we're partnering with a number of universities across the nation that also use the service. And essentially, you can think about it as a national database of college vetted community providers. So if somebody's looking for a provider here in the St. Louis area, or if they're looking for one in their home area, or if they happen to be someplace else and they look for, while they're out on an internship or something else, they need a provider in the community they're living in, we vet those through this service. Again, Thriving Campus is that entity. And the last thing that I would say is, in accordance with the Chancellor's speech, absolutely love the thoughts that your role is to be able to develop that lifeline to your students. This goes double for dads in the audience. We suck at listening. Let me just start there. We are outstanding at giving advice, but that's not really what our students need at this point. What they're going to be needing from you, and one of the take homes that I would give to you is, when your student calls and they're struggling with something, they're bright, sophisticated students. They wouldn't be here if they weren't. They wouldn't be here if you hadn't trained them to know, understand, and make good decisions. And so you telling them something they already know has an invalidating experience for them, and they know what you're going to say. If you were to ask them, what would I say about this? They could tell you that. So what they need from you, and my number one piece of advice as you communicate with your kids, is ask them any question that you need to ask them to understand what it feels like to be them. And if you ask those questions, they'll lead themselves to those right answers, and you'll strengthen that bond of communication between yourself and your student as they do move from that childhood phase into the student and adult phase. So thank you.
Thank you, Kirk. Thank you for that. Your team, all the teams, but your team just works tremendously with our students, and we appreciate it. So Cheryl, you get this question. And before Cheryl gets the question, she's been in this position for just 2 months, and it is her team. It's all our teams, but really her team has the prime responsibility to moving in and orienting your new students. So let's please again give Cheryl and her team a round of applause. All right, Cheryl. So this is a question from a parent. I am worried about the relationship my student has with their new roommate. They don't seem to be getting along. Is this normal, and what can I do to help?
Thank you, Dr. G. Easy. May not be what we all want to hear, but easy. Dr. G, I appreciate the recognition. I do want to give a really big kudos to my teams, Catherine Pay and her student transitions and family team, and Will Andrews and Brittany McDaniel on the residential life team. Do we have the WUSAs? I think we have WUSAs here. If you want to raise your hand, or the STFP team, I think we have them around. If we can give them a round of applause, please. Thank you. So the answer to the question, Dr. G, to parents is yes, they will have conflict. And conflict on a range of levels. It could be, Mom, my roommate took my favorite pen and they didn't return it. To someone took my laundry out of the washing machine and now it's sitting on top of the laundry machine. My roommate studies at night, but I study in the morning. I'm sorry, I'm gonna just say that your children will have friends over to their spaces. They start building relationships, and that sometimes becomes a problem for their roommate. But I do want to say that 95% of these conflicts are pink sock issues, right? That I think I'd want to remind you that college is a place where your children are going to learn about difference and are going to learn about people's preferences and beliefs. and ways of knowing and doing. And there are two things that I really want to ask you to do when your child calls you. Is one, I want you to encourage them to have dialogue and to be able to ask questions and to advocate for themselves. And as Kirk mentioned, we know that you have bright children, but we've never been good at training young adults coming through school on how to address crisis, how to address difference with other people that don't reside in their home, right? That some of your children may have their own room at home. Some of them may be single, that, you know, they're their only child in the family, and probably will have their first experience with actually advocating for themselves. And so I'd want you to encourage them and ask good questions to say, well, what happened? Do you think you can talk to your roommate? And we'd want to start there at the baseline, right? Really addressing questions and issues with the people that they're having concerns with. It becomes problematic, and this happens in residential life, right? That we have a student who then goes to a suite mate or their friend on another floor that build a conversation around what's happening in their space. So it becomes now a he said, they said, she said, they said, and it becomes a bigger issue than it should really be. So that's one point that I'm going to encourage you to do. Have encourage your children to have dialogue with their roommate or the individuals that they have conflict with. The second piece I'd want to encourage you to do is have them build community, make good friends, meet different people. What's really key in the residential halls is that they should know that there's a RA that lives on their floor. It's a peer to the students, but they live there. We also have full-time staff that live in the communities. And so they're never going to be alone. So if they have a pink sock moment and they feel like I need someone's help to help me to have this conversation or to ask questions about resources, there's never going to be a lack of support where they live. And I want to say that when students build community, it's easier to have those difficult discussions. It's probably more difficult if they haven't had the chance to meet people around them when an issue comes up and to start from scratch. So please encourage them to build community. I do want to echo some things that my colleagues have set up here is we really want to be partners with you. Well, we also want you to encourage your child to learn to be independent. So we will have parents that call us, which is great. I mean, I talk to parents all the time. My team talks to parents all the time. But sometimes there are requests from parents and guardians that really is not what the students want. And so I would say maybe half of the time we will talk to a parent for a long period of time, and just know that we will go back to your student and say, you know, we've heard, so let me come back to this. But if you have a dialogue with us, our role is to then go back to the student and say, we've heard that there's probably something happening. Can you talk to us? And we're going to be happy to help. There are times, however, that you call us and say, Cheryl, my child is having a roommate conflict, but don't tell them I told you. That is very difficult for us. And so, you know, we also encourage independence and conflict discussions. And so it's hard if your child doesn't know that you're communicating with us, because it puts us in a really tough situation to say, you know, I talked to the parent, they're really worried, but this kid down the hallway is really happy. You know, they hang out all the time. And so that's where those two things merge, right? That I think the parental advocacy and the student need may not align. So I encourage you as parents, talk to your students. And really it's having them vent. Maybe that's all they need to do. And then going back to the question of asking them what they want. Because it is quite embarrassing for students when we talk to them and say, oh, I talked to your mom 5 times. And they probably come back to you and say, Mom and Dad or Grandma and Grandpa, I can't believe you did that to me. So I encourage an open dialogue. So I would say that is true. You might have concerns. It might not be the exact need for the student. So keep that open. Although I have to tell you that there are times that we will contact you. Whenever a student's enrollment is being questioned, when their housing is being considered for removal, when disenrollment is on the table. I want to say that those things are not frequent. So I don't want you to worry as I'm saying out loud. I worked in conduct for 4 years. And so that was my world for a while. But don't be worried. That doesn't happen often. But just know that in times when there is a true need to contact you, we will be in touch. So I wouldn't want you to think, my gosh, I'm really giving my child independence here, but I don't know what's happening. In times that you need to be informed, we'll work with you as parents. One advice I want to tell you is before you leave, you might want to ask your students to check their record to ensure that their emergency contact is up to date. And there are 2 different categories for students in residential life that I'd want you to take attention to. Is one, there's an emergency contact section, which is typically your name and number and email and address. But there's also a section that we collect in residential life for students who go missing. And again, I don't want to share this with you to make you nervous, but we want to, as a university, be able to have accurate information to contact you when we need to. So I'd want you to do that before you leave. So bottom line is, yes, they are going to have conflicts. Most of them are pink sock moments, and talk to your student if they really want to do what you're telling or asking them to do. That's probably key. Thank you.
Thank you, Cheryl. This session next year is going to be called #PinkSockMoment. Thank you, Chancellor. That's amazing. I love it. All right. So this round is going to be the minute. So in our SALT Student Affairs Leadership Team, they give updates and they have just 1 minute of updates. Everyone goes around. And so it's going to be, you have a minute to answer the fast round because there's a lot of questions coming in. And Wusas, if you're here, there's a question in front. So, all right, here we go. So the first one for Rebecca is, I can help you with this. If my student has the option of taking a paid job at the mall or a restaurant, or they have a unpaid research, which one should they take? And does the university have funds to supplement them some money if it's an unpaid research or internship?
Thank you, Dr. G. What a student chooses to do, whether they work part-time or work in a research experience or in a particular internship, will really depend on what kinds of skills they're trying to develop and where they're going longer term. So we will work with the student on that plan and make sure that what they're pulling together as part of their package, so to speak, will line up. We do have funds to support unpaid internships and research experiences, as well as funds for students who may be taking internships in very expensive places, like if they're going to New York City or San Francisco and need a little bit of help. So have your student come and check out the Career Center. Again, great time to talk to those peer advisors this year to get a handle on what some of those services are.
Thank you. Ooh, that's a minute. All right, Rob, I'm going to give this one to you. It could be Cheryl, but I think I'm going to give it to you as our Dean of Students. If there's an emergency that a student is having, can I, as a parent, go and stay at the residence hall to help them?
I love it.
No, I'll take it. I'll take it. I'll take it.
I already delivered enough bad news.
I just read the questions, people.
No. That would be one of those to call the Dean of Students or my colleague to my right if you have a situation where you may need some emergency housing for yourself. We have lots of options to refer you to, but generally we do not want parents staying in residence halls for a variety of reasons I'll talk to you about afterwards.
We appreciate your partnership, but not that.
So Anthony, how is athletics doing in terms of our teams, and how do you anticipate us doing this coming year?
Again,
Again, I just
Is this mic
read
working?
the
I
questions.
don't think this mic
Anthony.
is working. To answer this question with the chancellor in the room. To be quite honest with you, we try to provide an athletic curriculum to really prepare these young people for tomorrow, to teach them resiliency, teach them how to buy into something bigger than themselves. And our coaches do a really good job of not just being extension of admissions, but I think they're some of the best teachers on this campus because it's bigger than the scoreboard, it's bigger than ball, is what we like to say, that this is one of the few places, and I believe this with all my heart, as far as I think it's important to know people's why. This is one of the few places where a young person can earn it all, earn a world-class degree, have a chance to compete for championships, and be prepared not to get a job, not to get a career, but to follow their purpose. And during that process, we put up a little bit of W's in the process. We do okay. We're a top-notch program that try to do it the right way. We always have kids either coming late or leaving early to practice, which is not like some of the other places I've been to, not to dog the SEC, but we do it in a way that it was meant to be done as far as college athletics, because it's really about education. Big E for education, small E for entertainment, and we want to provide a culture and an environment where these young people can thrive and grow. And so every year, my goal is to be one of the few schools in the country, whether it's Division I, Division II, or Division III, where all 19 of our programs, all 550 of our student athletes feel like they have a chance to compete for championships. They have a chance to follow their aspirations in an environment that won't come at the detriment of their education. We call that uncompromised excellence. So we try to recruit talented student athletes who want to become and graduate scholar champions. And that goal will never change, and it's still a focus. So if you ask me what I expect to compete for championships.
All right, thanks. Hey, there you go. The chancellor gave a thumbs up too, Anthony. There you go. All right. Okay, Kurt, there's a bunch of stuff, so I'm gonna give it to you. Will the university be giving, my child did not get the flu shot yet. Will the university be giving flu shots? Will we be able to get COVID booster shots? And what happens in terms of if they have COVID, what does the quarantine or isolation room look like? I got 5.
So yes, and we'll take care of them.
Yeah.
Upstairs in the duck, as your students were registering and connecting, if they didn't have all their immunizations taken care of, they could go upstairs. They could get their first COVID shot. They could get any of the boosters that they needed. They could get the flu shots were available. Any shots that your students needed have been given out over the last 2 days up in the duck. Those experiences and those opportunities will continue. So anything that your student needs, Habif Health and Wellness is always there to be able to serve them. If a student tests positive for COVID, certainly the ways that we're approaching COVID this year compared to 2 years ago are vastly different because of our immunization compliance and the ways in which our students are attending to their own personal health. So we have folks in Habif that will make sure that they get tested to figure out whether they have COVID or not. If your students are just in need of a test because they're curious, we've got a bunch of tests around campus called on-go testing, and they can pick those up at Habif, and there'll be other locations that we'll publicize to the students. Should they test positive, certainly we're going to make sure that they're safe and that we're attending to them. Again, our strategies in housing are a little bit different this year than they have been in years past, but rest assured that we've got medical professionals, immunization specialists, and immunologists that are all attending to the students' health and making sure we're doing the best that we can to help them.
Thank you. Okay, Mark, you get this question. If there's something, an ism that happens to my student, how do they report it and what happens next? And then follow up with that a little different. If my student is being bullied, I'm going to give this to Rob, I think. How do they report it and what happens next?
So 2 parts here. One is I'd encourage your student to have a conversation with whoever it is that they're having this negative interaction with first. If that is unresolvable, or if they feel like it needs to be reported, we do have the bias report and support system in which they would fill out a form online, or they can come into our office, or they can do it over the phone with us, with our team. And then we will have a prep session with them and support them and guide them to resources that would support them in that experience.
The second part of that question about being bullied, I just want to put in a plug. Cheryl mentioned this. We have a really outstanding trained team of upper class students that we call resident advisors. Those students have gone through, as I said, a lot of training. They're, I think, in floor meetings right now with your students as we sit here. their job really is to be there to develop relationships with every single one of their residents, for the very reason that if there's a problem, if a student is struggling in a class and wants advice, it's really a peer relationship where that RA can either address it through their training or move that complaint or situation up to a professional staff member. And so on the answer to the bullying question, that is where I think we certainly try to address those things. We don't see a lot of bullying here, but we know it happens. And I think a lot of it is because the RAs are so well trained to try to address those kinds of situations.
Thanks, Rob. Cheryl, what are options for, do most students live on campus during their second year at WashU?
Thanks, Dr. G. So we have about 95% of students return to on-campus housing in their second year. And so if your students enjoy the experience, and we hope that they're able to build community and that they're interested in doing that next year, we're able to fulfill that request. And overall, and I'm just gonna share this information. So for juniors and seniors, at any given point, we typically house 70% of our undergraduate students on the residential campus, residential side of the house.
And a follow-up, another question for Cheryl. My student was supposed to be living in a double, but discovered that she was placed in a room by herself. She does not want to be living by herself. What options does she have to help with the situation?
So in about 2 weeks, we'll be opening up a room change request form in their housing portal. So for all of you who have students who are saying, you know what, I'm not sure that this is the room that I want to be in, or the roommate I have, or want a different space, we'd encourage you to have them talk to their roommate if it's pink sock issues, that it might just be about some difference, but there is recourse to addressing that. So in 2 weeks, there's a room change request form that they can fill out, and those will be evaluated on a case-by-case basis.
Thank you. All right, Kirk. If my student has medication that has to be stored, who should they contact and where should that medication be stored?
Yeah, so again, as this individuation process and your students grow and develop on their own, I would encourage you to think about how they might be able to take ownership and responsibility for it as you continue to develop their adulting, as the hashtag goes, throughout the rest of their life. On some instances, there are some medications that require shipment into the student or particular care. And I would encourage your students to have a conversation with Habit Health and Wellness early, to be able to figure out what kinds of accommodations that they might need, how we can assist them in the process, and how we can help them to transition in caring for their own needs as they move through that. But we do have some assistance we can provide to that end.
Thank you. All right, Kirk, I have a couple of more follow-ups. When you said timely care, is this only for mental health, or does it do other things? And two, if a student is sick and needs medical assistance, especially at night or weekends, what should they do?
Yeah, so great questions. Timely Care has 7 different services they like to talk about as they offer. So I'm going to run through them really quickly with you. You can get immediate mental health help. You can schedule mental health appointments through them. You can get immediate medical help, and you can schedule medical appointments through them. They do consultations for eating, exercise, health and wellness kinds of stuff. And they have a small suite of psychiatric services as well that can assist. So there's a number of things that are available through Timely Care. So if a student does want to set up an ongoing appointment with somebody there, either for medical or mental health reasons, that's also available to them as well. So if they have an issue in the middle of the night, Timely Care, and especially that's why I want you to have your students get registered, they can contact that number and they'll be immediately contacted by, or immediately in touch with somebody who's a trained medical professional, and again, who specializes in working with the population that we have at the university. Another thing that I would say, and I'm going to take just an extra 30 seconds,
That's
is
okay.
Parents, if you haven't, build them a kit of like the one that you have at home for minor ailments and sicknesses. So it should have a thermometer. It should have whatever you take when they have a cold. It should have all of that kind of stuff in it, so that when they call you and say, hey, Mom, I'm really sick, you can say, hey, you know that green pill that we take? Go to your medicine cabinet and get that one. They'll have the medications with them that you usually give them at home. So that's one of the other things you can do, because you know that they're going to call you as well and want to be able to get your support. But rest assured, mental health, physicians, assistants, other kinds of anybody that they need, we can get them to here on campus or through Timely Care in the after hours.
So I just want to add something, Dr. G. So sometimes we'll have students coming to our RAs in the middle of the night and say, I have a headache. Do you have Tylenol? We're not going to be able to provide that to them from their peers and not from a medical professional. So I want to encourage, I think the advice that Kirk just gave for anything that you think your student may need on a recurring basis, even little, we could provide Band-Aids, but in the immediate need for those, it's nice to have some preparation.
Thank you. Rebecca, if I or my company has internships or jobs that we would like to give to WashU students, who should we call?
Dun, 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 dun. Dun, 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 dun. Oh, please call us. You can certainly start by sending me an email and I will connect you with the appropriate staff in our office that will get you set up. We love the opportunity to work with you to expand opportunities for our students. So please don't hesitate. If you're in a position to offer those internships or jobs, or you're in a position to advocate in your organization, all of those are incredibly helpful for our students. And having a real diversity of opportunity for our students is really incredibly important because, as you might imagine, we have just an incredible amount of interests here among our WashU students. So yeah, please reach out.
Thank you. I have a couple of questions that I can answer. I know, as I still keep looking through. So there's a few. What activities are students doing this week for the rest of fall welcome? Today, they'll be spending time learning about really living in our residential in our residence hall and what it means to live amongst people. Some are still strangers, but hopefully will be friends and family by the time that they're done with the residential experience. Then they'll spend the rest of the week exploring what it means to be a WashU student academically and co-curricularly. And this year, we are having a new program called In the Lou. It really goes with the vision of the Chancellor that we are in, with, and for St. Louis. And so we are having them explore St. Louis as citizens, of getting to be citizens of St. Louis and not tourists, because we are in, with, and for St. Louis. So please encourage your students to take part in the many activities we have, because it's a great way to start their WashU career. The next one is the mailroom appears to have significant delays and my student is still waiting for packages. Is the package processing time typical for what we can expect for the year? We do need your patience for this. As you may have heard, we had lots of rain and flood, but we're working on it. And so that caused some delays, but more importantly, there's a lot of them that came. It's been a bit. And so our mailroom folks are doing all things heroic to try to get them to your students. So it's honestly between the mail coming here and them just sorting it out, but they will get their mail. And throughout the year, it should be okay. It's just this time of the year that's just a little slow. So thank you for your patience on that. All right, so the next question is going to be, there was one for Rob that I was going to do. Yes, Rob, because you've been here for a long time. Can you talk a little bit about, and you live in St. Louis for a long time. Can you talk about safety issues with regards to St. Louis and what my student can do to make sure that they are safe as they are exploring St. Louis?
Great question. I was worried you're going to keep emphasizing how old I am. I love St. Louis. I think all my panelists here, even the one who's only been here for 6 days, are really love living here in St. Louis. And many of my colleagues live right next to campus and experience the great things that are within either a short walking distance or a short metro ride away from campus. Part of the orientation that's happening this week is we will talk about safety with your students, because we know our students come from all kinds of different environments. We have students from New York City and we have students from rural Nebraska, and those students have had different experiences. So we'll talk about the different safety precautions that we want to remind people to take as they're traveling storytelling about St. Louis. I do want to say, having been here working here for 23 years, we have one of the greatest police departments on any college campus that you'll ever find. I hope you got to see some of the women and men of our police department yesterday as you were moving in. Their headquarters is located right on the South 40, and they work really closely with Cheryl's team in particular, but all of us in student affairs to be attentive to how our students are coming and going. They'll work with neighboring communities around lighting, blue light phones, and so we have invested a lot in the partnerships that we have with the neighboring municipalities, so that as our students are coming and going to and from campus as we want them to, that there's a level of safety investment that we've made here in the immediate campus vicinity.
Great. Thank you, Rob. There's one question that was asked of me, so I'm going to answer it, and then I will ask Catherine Pay to come up because I think she's going to lead you all to the next phase. I just want to say, first of all, thank you to my colleagues up here. They've been fabulous and they're really great. Don't tell the rest of the vice chancellors across the campus, but I have the best team and I'm not competitive at all. Seriously, our work is serious work and we do it with we are earnest, we are tenacious, and we have a little sense of humor. And they are a caring bunch of folks who love our students. I often tell people, if you go into student affairs, and I do this, I speak nationally about this, you have to love every student. You may not like what they do sometimes, but you have to love them. And this group loves your students already. So the question that was asked of me is, what are the two things that are most important for me or I'm thinking about for this class of 2026, particularly because they are still a part of, I hate to call it the COVID generation, right? There's those disruptions. And I've been asking them their questions. And the two that have come up in my head, the first is, I want to make sure that all the students have a sense of belonging. Student Affairs has a strategic plan that was approved this year. It leads up to the institutional strategic plan. One of ours, what anchors, is sense of belonging. It's so important for every student to know and feel like WashU is their home, that they have at least their peoples. Right? It could just be 2 or 5, and there's some might have 20, but they have their peoples here that they can turn to and that they belong. And so that's the first thing is I constantly think, what are we doing to make sure every student has a sense of belonging, that they know that this is their place and someone cares for them. So that's the first thing. And the second thing is, how do they learn to listen? Not to necessarily agree, right? Listening and hearing and even understanding doesn't always lead to like, oh, I now agree with you, or I'm going to go your way. But at least you heard a different perspective and you understand where someone is coming from. Those are the two things that as I constantly think in this class, the most diverse class that WashU has had thus far in our history, is what do those things mean? Sense of belonging. And are they really listening? And what can we do as an institution? And in our world, what can we do in student affairs? Because I think if we get that right, everything else will fall into place. And so with that, families, parents, support systems, thank you for the honor of sending your student to us. Thank you. Thank you. Enjoy the rest of your time. And we will see you later today and or Family Parent Weekend. Thanks, everyone.
Hi, good morning, everyone. My name is Catherine Pay. I'm the Director of Student Transitions and Family Programs. I know many of you are going to choose to attend the Dean's meetings for families in a moment, and so we're going to release you in an orderly fashion to make sure that some of my wonderful colleagues can get you to your next place. But before I do that, I just wanted to say thank you again to Chancellor Martin, Vice Chancellor Gonzalez, and my wonderful Student Affairs leadership team. So can you give them one last round of applause? So as I said, I'm going to release you by academic division, and I have some great colleagues in the hallway who will make sure you get to your next location. However, if you need a pit stop or a pick-me-up, dining services has coffee service in the Danforth University Center, which is the building next door to us. So I'm going to release you by academic division, but if you're like me and didn't have quite enough caffeine yet today, you can get that in the Danforth University Center. If your student is in Beyond Boundaries or a joint degree program, like the computer science and Olin Business School joint degree program, you can choose which academic division you want to go to. There's not a perfect path for you the same way maybe if your student is in the College of Arts and Sciences and solely in that school. And so we're going to begin by releasing families who have a student in Sam Fox School of Design and Visual Arts. So those are students in architecture and art. And my colleagues will take you to Steinberg Auditorium. If you have a student in the Olin Business School, my colleagues are going to walk you to Emerson Auditorium in the Knight Center.